Welcome back to our channel. I'm Danielle, your resident romantic.
And I'm Lindsay, the fantasy fan, and we are friends
Till the book ends. Today we are doing another book club review video. This one was my pick, and I chose Like a Love Story by Abdi Nazemian. This one I picked because I know Lindsay has quite a few books on her shelf,
Yes.
and this sounded interesting, so I decided that we need to go ahead and read it together.
And it's a really good pick for Pride Month. I'll let Danielle go into the synopsis, but we thought it worked really well because June is Pride Month, and look at this stunning cover as well.
I really love the color, but the
yes.
cover.
Points.
It's so
Points
perfect.
for the cover. So yeah, do you want to kind of give us a synopsis?
Alright, so I'm going to try and encompass as much as I can in the summary. I may miss out a little bit because there are a lot of intricate details into this. So this book takes place in 1989. It's during the rising peak of the AIDS epidemic, and it gives 3 points of views throughout the book. The first one is Art. He is out, he is proud, he is gay, and ready to share it with the world. Then we meet his best friend, Judy. Of course, all these are in high school. This is a YA novel. Judy is straight. She is on the larger side, so she has a lot of struggles finding guys who are accepting of that. And then we meet Riza. He is Iranian/Parisian. He came from Tehran to Toronto and has now settled in New York. He's starting up at the high school that Judy and Art are at, and he meets both of them. Riza is recently discovering that he is gay, but he is very much in the closet. As I mentioned, since it's during the peak of the AIDS epidemic, he is very paranoid about AIDS. It's almost a paranoia to the fact where if he just thinks gay thoughts, he's very worried that that could contract somehow. So he very much has to hide that and wants to come off as straight. So on the first day, he meets Judy. Judy is putting on the flirt a little bit, and he's like, I like this girl. She seems nice. Let's go for it. And Art, of course, meets Riza, and Art's gaydar is going off the radar. He's like, Riza, are we,
what's going on?
So it's kind of an intricate love story that is going on there. And alongside that story, you also have a bunch of activism, protests, and it also touches on the ACT UP group because that's a very important part in the story. So it's kind of an individual look at the three characters and then also a national look at this AIDS epidemic, all written in a fiction novel. I think I've covered everything. Keep in mind, since this is a book club review, there are probably going to be spoilers in it. I've covered everything. Lindsay, what is your rating of the book?
So, this was a book that I kind of had conflicting feelings about. I think I'm settling on around a 4-star read.
Okay.
How did you feel?
I tentatively gave this book a 5.
Okay.
And
good.
I say tentative, but I'm going to get to that a little later. What are your brief thoughts of the book? Why did you give it a 4?
So, I just first want to say that the author has some of the most stunning, quotable prose that I have read in a very long time. I was reading the book and I was like, I don't know, 15 pages in and I already was like, that's a quote I love. That's a quote I love. Like he's such a good writer, and that made the story itself flow very well. I think that the topics were just very dark. Obviously, since we're dealing with the AIDS epidemic and the fact that America, because of the, as they so eloquently put it, the fucking Reagans.
Yeah.
They completely were ignoring the problems that were happening in the queer community, and therefore it just led to a complete misrepresentation of the community, what AIDS was, how people like actually contract it, and nobody was helping. So it was very dark, but I also thought that the author tried to inject some humor into it. So it just felt sometimes a little, I know that we talk a lot. I know that I've had conversations with friends before, when we're talking about what it's like being part of the queer community and how about, like a lot of books and stuff focus a lot on queer trauma. And there's no real, like, bright side to the story. You're just kind of reading about the sad things that happen to people. And then it's kind of like, that's the end. And, you know, I kind of felt at some points like we were focusing, and I'm sure this was the point of the book, but we were focusing on all of the bad things. And I felt like there needed to be more of a balance between, like, the good parts about being gay or queer, and being part of that community instead of just the negative things. So that kind of just it made it a little too heavy for me. But like I said, it's a heavy topic, so it might have just kind of been a personal thing.
Of course.
But what are your general thoughts, feelings, ideas about it?
Yeah, so I gave it a 5. I agree, it was very heavy. However, if I'm in the right mindset, I tend to enjoy heavier books like that as well. One of the things that really stuck to me about this book is because it was such a heavy topic, I felt like I learned more about the AIDS epidemic and movements involved in it.
Definitely.
Because I was not around in 1989.
No.
I was certainly not, if I were, I wouldn't have been old enough to really understand what was going on. So I feel like, I personally did not learn much about the AIDS epidemic in high school or middle school or anything like that. And so I felt like this was not necessarily fully educational, but it kind of put me in those shoes.
Yeah.
And a lot of things is when you're learning about epidemics or anything that affects specific minorities or groups of people, especially in school, you learn the facts, but when you read fiction books like this, you kind of get to learn the emotion as well. You can guess what it was like, but once you read it, you're like, I'm there. Real quick, the reason I'm tentatively giving it a 5 is because when I was reading this book, I kept going in waves between I'm bored and I'm excited.
Yes.
And I have realized that might be me personally, because I also recently read The Last Night at the Telegraph Club, which is very similar to this in that it takes an individual look at a girl who's discovering her lesbianism and the semi-romance that may be going on there, while also looking at a national crisis such as the Red Scare and communism and how that affects her. And I had the same feeling there. And I think what's going on with me is that when I'm reading about the activist parts, I'm like, yeah, I'm in it, let's go. And then it drops to a romance part, and I'm like, but what about the activism? And then
Which is so different for you.
Right. And then it'll go back to the activism, and I'm like, but what about the romance? So I kept going on a roller coaster ride. I'm trying not to let it affect the score, though, because I think that's me personally. So that is why my tentative score is 5. Let's look at the characters first of all. Characters.
Yes.
I guess let's start with our main 3. Riza, Judy, Art. What are we feeling?
So, I feel as if I connected probably to Art the most, just because I feel like the author did a really good job of creating Art to be, like, he's an activist, but he's also, like, a teenage boy, and he also, like, there's a monologue kind of, like, midway through when he's talking about what it's like to be gay and how his whole, like, idea of, like, I can't crush on a boy at school without being scared that they're gonna, like, beat me up, or, you know, the fear that comes with being gay, especially in 1989, where we're at the height of the AIDS epidemic. I just felt like his character seemed like the most real to me because he was, you know, also trying to he argued with his parents a lot about, like, what he wanted to do, and the whole acceptance with the parents thing. I just felt like his character was so authentic. Riza was a character that I kind of was like, Riza and Judy I had more issues with, I think, in the beginning of the book, because obviously Riza starts dating Judy because he doesn't want anybody to know that he's gay.
Right.
And the way that he goes about it, and once again, I'm not a gay man living in 1989 when this is happening, so I can't necessarily, I don't know that I have the ground to stand on to criticize his actions, but it was, like, the way he went about it was, like, so wrong and messed up, and maybe it's the point, to show how desperate people are to dispel any rumors or ideas that they may be gay, that they're willing to use and abuse the people around them so that they themselves are not abused. And so it just kind of, you know, his actions were rough in the beginning, and then I really didn't like Judy in the middle when the whole thing went down where Riza broke up with her because he was like, I'm gay, and then she was just, like, immediately mad at Art. Like, I just felt like that was a strange arc for her character to take. But I think my favorite character was Uncle Stephen.
Before we touch on Uncle Stephen, because I agree with that. So, I personally, especially when there are multiple point of views, and 3, first of all, in this book, I personally felt like each character was individual. I don't know if you agree with that, but sometimes
they were all distinct.
Right, sometimes authors can kind of blend their characters together when writing different points of views, and I thought that he did a great job separating it. I'm not saying I liked Judy's character, but I did understand how she kind of quick went to hatred during that scene, because I myself, especially in high school and middle school, I was so dramatic about everything, especially in the heat of the moment. And I look back on myself and I'm like cringing at everything I did. So I can kind of understand it. I definitely like that each character was kind of a different representation of what was going on during that time period.
Yeah, definitely.
Some people were out and proud. Some people were hiding it, covering it up by dating people of the opposite sex. I felt like personally Judy was a little underdeveloped for me as a character though. I do think art shone out of all three of them.
Yeah.
Uncle Stephen was absolutely my favorite as well.
Yes, so Uncle Stephen is Judy's uncle who is dying from AIDS. But he also becomes kind of like a mentor to Art. And he's just around a lot in the book because he is the one who's really involved in activism. He kind of gets everyone involved, but he also, I think his character is the one where he stood out to me as being like, it was just like heartbreaking to read about. So his whole thing is that every time a friend dies, he puts a jelly bean.
I was hoping you were going to talk about that.
Yeah, he puts a jelly bean in a jar, and when he is going to die, he's going to eat all the jelly beans to represent, you know, his friends as if they're there with him.
Right.
And it just, it made me tear up a little bit because it was just so sad.
I felt like that was a very genuine character definition for their personality because it almost made it feel like Uncle Stephen was my uncle.
Yes.
And I was like, but I can picture the jelly beans, I can picture the different colors, and there are a couple times where there's actually a scene of him putting the jelly bean in, and it's very descriptive. It's like, it's the red jelly bean, it's a light pink jelly bean, this is for, you know, whoever. I'm not going to say who because I don't want to spoil deaths. Yeah. But I thought that was very touching. I loved that it was continuous throughout the book. I was afraid they were going to talk about it in the beginning and not mention it until it was needed later on. As for the parents, I personally liked that not all of the parents in the story were very accepting of Art, who was out and proud when Riza became out of the closet. I thought that if all the parents were very accepting, it wouldn't have been realistic to me.
Yeah.
Because I know, especially in that time, everyone was like, gay, go away.
Right, pray the gay away.
Right. Oh, yeah, I remember that phrase. So I liked that. Any other characters?
I don't think so. The parents were really interesting. It was so, I really, like, kind of put a lump in my throat, like, when Riza comes out to his mom, and his mom is like, he is talking about how he's the one that has to console her.
Yes.
When he comes out because she's crying and she's so upset, and she's like, well, can't you just, like, change? And he's like, I don't think that's how it works. And she's like, well, anybody can change. Like, they're viewing it as, like, a choice, and she's sobbing on the couch, and he goes over and he's like, here I am, like, consoling as if I'm the parent, but, like, I'm the child. I'm the one who needs to be consoled. So it just, the parents were really, really interesting. I thought Judy's mom was particularly complex because her mom obviously is the brother, or Stephen is her brother, so it just, the way that she didn't talk about it with other people, how she just, like, she's a book club, and when her book club was like, oh, how's your brother, you know, they all think that he's dying of cancer, not AIDS, and she doesn't correct them. So it's kind of this weird, like, she's very accepting of her brother, and she loves him, and she'd do anything for him, but at the same time, she's still very concerned about other people, and, like, what they say. So I thought that just the complexity of every character just shows how, you know, inherently one person is not good or bad, and how there's, like, multiple facets to everybody.
Right. But and I personally liked how every character showed a different spectrum of accepting versus not accepting, and how not everyone is going to be on the same side. Also, the stepfather for Riza, what was his name? Absa? I don't remember the specific name for the stepfather, but the stepfather for Riza that the mother had married. In the beginning, I got a very, like, harsh, non-emotional vibe from him. Yeah. But then when Riza comes out, the stepfather's actually like, it doesn't matter. We're going to take it one step at a time. Yeah. We're all going to cope with this. And I was really surprised by that.
Liked that, how he wasn't the evil step-parent.
Yes.
Kind of
I really thought, I was afraid when that scene would happen. I thought he was going to say, you know, Riza, you have to leave. I thought he was going to kick him out. And so I liked that kind of character 360. Also, real quick, I wanted to mention, there is a kind of lighter side that we see of Sadi, the stepbrother.
Oh, yeah.
And first of all, I wasn't sure I was okay with that 360 change, but at the same time, I think I would have liked a book focusing on him to see kind of what he grows up and
Yeah.
what's going on with that.
Kind of to see his character progression more.
Yes,
Yeah.
absolutely.
I
I was gonna say I'm excited to talk about the plot, specifically the ending, but I don't want to jump there if we have other things.
No, let's jump. You go ahead.
Okay, so I thought that the ending, to me, this ending was a little unpredictable. Specifically the epilogue, that was not necessarily an epilogue. Like, I loved how that was set up. So first of all, the general ending of the book, it is sad. For once I didn't cry at this one, but I did
Really?
tear up a little bit. What about, you said you were tearing up a little bit, right?
Yeah, I mean, I think this is a topic that I don't think you can't not feel
Right.
like a deep well of emotion about it.
Right. So the ending itself was a little, you kind of knew what was going to happen. And the way that the book is made is that first it starts in fall of 1989, then it switches you to December 1989 because there's specific protests that occur at that time frame, and then you switch to kind of June 1990, and then you get past this part where the three of them are discussing what they're going to do for the future, and then you turn the page and it's June 2016, and you're like, whoa! What? And that is kind of the epilogue to the book. Like, it's not specifically...
the big time
right.
jump, yeah.
It's not specifically called the epilogue, and I'm sitting there doing the math, and I'm like, okay, they're like 40 now, and it kind of goes over a quick life view for each one, where they are now, what exactly happened, and, I don't want to spoil the epilogue, but there's something you learn about art, and it's like... It makes you want to cry a little bit, because it kind of goes full circle.
Yeah.
And then, I'm gonna cry talking about it, but... The epilogue was just so... I'm talking a lot. The epilogue was perfectly placed, in my opinion.
Yeah, I thought that the plot of the book was really interesting. I liked how, like, the time jumps were specific to important things that were happening in our characters' lives. But I don't know if this author has written anything else.
Oh, one thing to mention, I like that it's in own voices.
Yes.
Because I read the author's note, or the author's note, and, he went through that. At first, I thought he was going to say that, like, all of these characters were, like, specific friends that he went through and with, and it wasn't quite like that. But it was so beautiful.
Yeah, and I like how the story centers around, like, queer people of color, because I think that, oftentimes that those voices aren't uplifted and aren't the ones that we're hearing. So the fact that it's from a queer author of color who's talking about activists who are, Black or Iranian or whatever, just really, like, hammered down the point that, like, these are the people who started the revolution. These are the people that led us to where we are today. And I just thought this was so good. It's blurbed on the back by a bunch of famous authors, and it also won the Stonewall Honor Book Award, which I think is very appropriate for Pride Month. So this was, I think, a very good pick.
Yes, even if we had differing scores, overall ratings, I still think it was
a positive.
It was a positive book. I personally would recommend it to anyone.
Yes.
But I just...
Get your tissues ready, but I recommend it, definitely.
It was so good. If you have read this book, let us know down below what you've thought about it. If you've read this book and you have maybe other recommendations based off of this book, also let us know. I would love to read a little bit more about these stories.
I love the historical context.
Yes. I guess I'm slowly starting to read more historical fiction, because I
Proud
don't
of you.
usually, but I'm like dipping my toe in the sand.
Yes.
You can't see it. So yeah, thank you for joining us on this journey, and we'll catch you in our next video.
Bye.